Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Film Odyssey podcast, where me and my brother trek through cinema on a quest to find the greatest film ever made. This season, we begin our journey by counting down the AFI Top 100 Films of All Time. So come and join us on our Film Odyssey as we talk about Do the Right Thing. And that is the truth, Ruth. There you go, Randy. I got the... That's the truth, Ruth thing at the end there for you.
From Samuel L. Jackson.
From Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson, who's in this movie. But... we do have a caveat here. This is actually our second time recording this episode because the first one corrupted for no known reason. No known reason. We recorded it. I saved it. I opened it up a couple of days later, do the edit, and it was a blank file. Don't know what happened. It was just gone. Yeah. You blame me for a lot of things.
Exactly. But in the reality of the situation, so this is a second viewing for me instead of a first viewing.
This is like my 6th or 7th viewing.
Your second viewing outside of academia.
Yes. Second viewing outside of the academic circles, yes.
And I don't think my opinion has changed very much on this movie. But let's get into our opinions first, and then whether or not they've changed from the second viewing. We'll get to that at the end.
Okay. Because I think my opinions have actually changed a lot since the last time I watched it.
Well, we can go into, your opinions now, but we'll talk about how our opinions may have changed at the end.
Okay. So... let's just get started with the very basic stuff of Do the Right Thing. Namely, the plot.
What's it about?
Yeah. So, this film takes place over the course of one day in the Bed-Stuy neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. And it follows the stories of these colorful cast of characters in this ongoing heat wave. And in that heat wave, everything boils over and the block just comes over into this violence along all the racial lines in the neighborhood. And eventually culminating in the death of one of the main characters, Radio Raheem, and the destruction of Sal's Pizzeria in a waking riot.
If locations could be main characters, Sal's Pizzeria would be the main location for the movie.
Pretty much. The entire story revolves around Sal's Pizzeria.
Yes.
But yeah, and we got a pretty stellar cast here. Rosie Perez's first role, Martin Lawrence's first role, Giancarlo Esposito, if you don't know Giancarlo Esposito, because he's Italian.
Who is
Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, and also bugging out in this movie.
Which makes his comments in the movie very, ironic.
A little bit.
Because he's half Italian in real life, and he's complaining about Italians in the movie. I'm pretty sure that was on purpose.
Probably. And we also have Samuel L. Jackson in this role, or in this film as well. He's the Mac Daddy Love DJ.
Yes.
Who's kind of this narrator of the film a little bit.
Spike Lee in this movie.
Also, I didn't want to get to Spike Lee. All right, look.
We're already just talking about Spike Lee's acting in this movie. Might as well get it out of the way. We know what's gonna happen.
All right, so that's something that I'll say I understand more because he is trying to be as naturalistic as possible.
Yeah,
he's trying to portray a very realistic human being, but Spike Lee is not. He's not even as good as John Turturro, or he's not as good as any of the other actors in this. On the scale, he's the worst actor in the film.
Is he worse than the actor that plays Smiley? Because I know you don't like that portrayal of Smiley.
No. I think the actor is giving a good portrayal of a caricature of somebody who has a mental disability, but I think that portrayal is really...
It's too far in the caricature?
It's a little messed up, yeah. So there's a character in the film called Smiley who... how would you describe Smiley?
Well, he's got some kind of mental disorder, right? And he has this really bad stutter, and he kind of doesn't understand social cues, and he goes around listening to. He has a tape player. He listens to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King recorded speeches and sells pictures of them.
Basically, yeah, which he draws on.
And that's Smiley's character.
The other thing is just how he talks. I find really just grating and a little offensive, but that's a whole other thing.
Here's actually an anecdote from real life. Dylan talked like that.
Yeah. We had a friend in high school who had a very serious speech impediment. He had a stutter,
but he wasn't mentally deficient or anything. He just had a really awful stutter.
Yeah. But Smiley, he just has
He's got both.
I just have issues with that character. But Spike Lee...
Because he is definitely, kind of blown out of proportion,
Yeah. But Spike Lee, who is the main character, the writer, the producer, the director of this film, and he is the lead actor. He's the main character, Mookie, who... I don't know. It's just, I feel like he's just not the best actor in. He's not the best actor in general. He's fine, but it's just really shown up by the fact that everyone else is so much better than he is, and it's just really hard to distinguish that, I guess.
It's just the truth of this movie that everybody else is putting in more effort than Mookie. Although it also comes off with Mookie's character because he's supposed to be kind of like this lazy guy.
Yeah.
And the acting comes off as lazy, which might be probably intentional, but like too laissez-faire, too kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
Acting style that comes from Spike Lee here for his own character.
I mean, also...
Other actors in this movie, really good.
Oh, fantastic. I think Dan Aiello...
The Italian brothers and their father.
Yeah, we have Dan Aiello, who's playing Sal. We have John Turturro playing Pino, and then we had Richard Edson playing Vito. Those three have just like great chemistry together. They really do feel like, you know, this family here. And also John Turturro is great in everything he's in.
He's really good in this movie too.
Very good. Also,
even though I do feel like they, like, on the second viewing, it does feel more like they're playing Italian caricatures.
A little bit. Yeah.
I mean, they show up in like the wife beater. They're always like, come on, you know, the gold, little like gold chains, you know, like.
They just start spewing.
Really Italian.
They start yelling at each other, and then it turns like full blown Italian halfway through the conversation, and then it just comes back when somebody else is like, "What the fuck are you saying?" It's great. But yeah, we also have Ozzie Davis in here playing DeMayer, who is my favorite character in this film. Really dig him.
He's the most even though he's like this drunk bum, he's the most level-headed character in the story.
Yeah.
And his portrayal is really good. I really like the actor here.
And also across from that is his wife, Ruby Dee, who plays Mother Sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In real life, they were married for, decades.
I see. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. You're just like, seeing how much they hate each other on screen, they gotta be married. It's gotta be it.
No.
It's the meme. But yeah, no, this is a great cast of characters. I really dig it. Where do you want to start?
Where do I want to start with this? Well, let's see. Let's get like the stuff we know we're going to discuss out of the way so we can really get at it. So, awards.
Oh yeah, the awards for this were interesting because when this film got released, it got like 30 nominations across a bunch of festivals. And it got 2 Oscar nominations. It only won the Best Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor awards for that one. But here's the thing. That year, it wasn't nominated for Best Film. But was nominated was another film on race relations in America, Driving Miss Daisy, which won Best Picture that year. Yeah, and people looked at it as like they nominated the safe movie about racism. Yes. Yeah. But the film also won a lot of awards in other festivals and award shows. Most notably, the Los Angeles Film Critics Association gave it Best Film, Supporting Actor, Director, and Music. And music. I mean, the music in this is really good. The Public Enemy song, Fight the Power, that's original to the movie.
Is that song is kind of... It's funny because it's overplayed in the movie. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, the inclusion of the Steel Pulse song is pretty good, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love Steel Pulse.
Yeah.
Seen them in concert.
Yes, we have. We have seen them in concert. What else is there to talk about before we really deep dive into it?
I guess why Spike Lee made this?
Sure, go for it.
So
I don't think we talked about that last time.
I don't think we did, but the original seed of the idea came from a Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode where that episode talked to the theory of, you know, more violence happens when things get hotter. So he's like, oh, well, I can do something about that. But also, while he was coming up with this, there was multiple deaths of African Americans from police violence, and there was another incident somewhere in New York where a gentleman was chased out of a pizzeria and beaten. So he took those outside influences and incorporated in the film, and that's kind of how this movie came about. It was his statement on race relations in America and that
incorporating the like heat aspect from the Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Mm-hmm. I see. What about the reception of the movie? Like audience reception. How was that?
The audience reception? Okay, so its reception was good. It did, you know, make its money back. It was a very good success, but there was controversy when it premiered because no shit. The biggest stuff that was going on was that there were some critics who let's just say we're making some pretty racially charged comments. Like, this will radicalize...
Oh, no.
They were saying this film will radicalize black audiences to riot and burn down their neighborhoods.
Are you doing like an Alex Jones impression when you say
the
that?
The water's turning the frogs gay.
Oh, no.
But Spike Lee
Okay.
defended this by, saying, hey, I don't see people blowing each other away after seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Is that just because they're white? And that kind of was a pretty good comeback, because it's like, people are fucking adults. They can take art and process it. So,
which is what we're doing here today.
We're trying our best.
Speaking of which, let's finally actually get into the meat and potatoes. Not to be racially charged or anything, but meat and potatoes.
Is that just because I'm Irish?
Well, I am Irish too.
Yeah.
And so's the guy. I'm assuming he's Irish, wearing the Celtics jersey. It's Celtics. Yeah, not a basketball guy. I'm not a basketball guy. I don't watch no basketball. I don't watch sports ball in general.
Gotcha. But yeah.
But the whole thing of that scene is that they're getting after him because he like scuffed Bugging Out's Jordans. Mm-hmm. Which is like, it's become almost like a meme today.
It is a meme. For God's sakes, the Boondocks did a whole episode about the meminess of that.
Of scuffing somebody's Jordans.
Yo, Jordans, they're $60 landmines, man.
They're not $60.
Sorry, Nike, $60 landmines.
There you go. I'm like, Jordans, that's like a $180 landmine.
That almost costs as much as an actual landmine.
Exactly. It probably costs more, actually. It's kind of one of those sad things to think about.
Did Jordans actually cost more than landmines?
They fucking might.
We'll get back to that later.
But anyway, so Bugging Out gets up in this guy's face, for scuffing his shoes, and I think we'll refer to them as the choir.
Yeah.
Right? The three guys and the girl.
Yeah, that's Martin Lawrence and his whole crew. They just keep showing up at these very interesting points, and they're
kind of like hyping up, one aspect of the conversation, one aspect of this conflict, right?
Yeah, they're jumping onto a view.
So they jump onto Bugging Outside, and they basically throw all these, funnily, like, racist remarks out at this guy who scuffed up Bugging Out's shoes, and the guy comes out and he's, like, I was born and raised here, I own this brownstone, like, this is as much my neighborhood as yours. And they're all like, psh, get out of here with that. Go back to Massachusetts, And it's kind of one of these funny things you see in the movie where, like, everybody's a little racist in this movie. Like,
yeah.
Which one? Pino.
Yeah.
Pino. He's really racist against the black people in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Even going so far as calling Mookie the N-word at a point in the movie. Bugging Out is, like, racist against the Italian Americans and the white guy.
Yeah.
Or Irish American. All right, I gotta be more specific.
Yes.
And then also most of the neighborhood is racist towards the Korean guys.
I mean, that definitely the three gentlemen that sit against the red wall. Mm-hmm. Sweet Dick Willie is one of them, which great name. But you made an interesting observation about those three. Is that
true?
Yeah, because we did notice that through their accents and certain comments made in the movie, Sweet Dick Willie, he's American. Then you have one of the other gentlemen who I believe is like Caribbean, and then you have the third gentleman who is,
he almost seems like West Indian, like or with like a West Indian admixture.
Yeah, so it's almost interesting that we're seeing these three older gentlemen comment and getting along. They're all from different sections of the world, but they're getting along. This isn't like confirmed
or anything. We didn't look it up, but it seems like it's supposed to be like these three different people having kind of like a similar but not quite the same viewpoints while all being quote unquote like African American. Sweet Dick Willie seems to be like, he's been like his family's been in America for generations, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't remember the name of the guy on the left.
That's the problem. It's because they make a point of calling him Sweet Dick Willie like 45 times.
Yeah, so we all know his name, but I don't know ML. That's his name.
Oh, that's
ML.
right. ML and the other one. Oh, God. Yeah, he is Caribbean. His name is Coconut Sid.
Okay, so, ML, he's the one I thought would be, or not like West Indian. I thought Coconut Sid would be.
No.
But, ML, he seems to be like, more like, first generation African. I think they make a comment or whatever that he's supposed to be like off the boat just like the Koreans.
Yeah.
In the movie. And so it's funny to see the three of them, Caribbean, straight up African, and then African American, kind of like getting along and like having similar but different viewpoints altogether.
Yeah.
It's an interesting kind of like thing I didn't notice the first time when we watched the movie, and then I noticed kind of like, oh, it's showing like this kind of togetherness of these people under like an umbrella,
and it's very defined under this umbrella of like race. They all share it here in this society.
Well, race in like the very general sense of like your skin color instead of like, you know, the area you come from, like race instead of ethnicity.
Yeah,
you know, because you could make a very like distinction between the three of them being like, you know, they're not all the same, but they feel this camaraderie even though they're obviously not from the same places. You know, they're not at all ethnically Nigerian or whatever.
Yeah,
they're ethnically very different, but they all come together over this umbrella of race. They're all Black Americans.
And that's like a really interesting thing because this whole movie is about talking about race in America, the racial tensions that rise up between people.
Yeah, it's kind of taking a snapshot of late 80s racial tensions in America.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of the things that it's talking about still are relevant today.
Yeah, they resonate they resonate with society even today.
And a big thing that I always come back to is like Sal. So this is something that people have asked a bunch of times, and I don't think I ever posed it to you in any of our previous conversation. Is Sal racist? Because Spike Lee, when asked, says yes, Sal is racist, but Danny Aiello, the actor portraying Sal, says no. Actually, Danny Aiello argued at the end when Ray Raheem and Buggin' Out confront him, and he yells the N-word at them. You know, in this moment of, like, just anger.
Yes.
Danny Aiello argues, like, Sal wouldn't do that. Like, Sal's not a racist. He wouldn't say that. And Spike Lee said, no, you have to say it. It's for the theme of the movie. It's, you know, blah, blah, blah. So, it's an interesting thing where the director and writer is like, no, he is this. And the actor portraying was like, no, I don't feel it here. I don't feel in his character. So, is Sal racist in your opinion?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Well, because he has this like very friendly relationship with a lot of people in the community, just not Bugging Out and Radio Raheem.
All right.
It's one of those things where, you know, if he was like racist, he'd be prejudiced against like, you know, 90+% of them, but he's not. He's only quote unquote prejudiced against 2 of them, but he's not even prejudiced against them because they kind of have like him and Bugging Out have like a mutual disagreement. And then Radio Raheem has, like, a more one-sided confrontation with Sal. The first time around, at least.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. So, do you think Bugging Out has a stake in this? Or do you think Bugging Out's desire to have, brothers or African Americans on the wall, do you think he's justified in that at all?
He's somewhat justified because, you know, I can see where he's coming from, but the thing is that he doesn't take it in any kind of diplomatic way, you know? He just kind of demands it. And Sal's like, well, I own the place. Like, I'll do whatever I want with it. You know, just nothing you can really do about it. And he says, well, I'll boycott it. But the thing is that he doesn't boycott it. He just kind of barges in there at the end of the movie. And, like, when they're closed, even.
And also, he goes around and asks all these people to join his boycott, and everyone else in the neighborhood is like, no, fuck off. Sal's awesome.
Radio Raheem.
Yeah. Actually, there's an interesting thing because I
the thing though
noticed this. Oh,
here
go ahead.
Is to make a distinction here is that I don't think Sal is racist, but Pino definitely is.
Yeah. Well, Pino obviously is racist.
He's racist. But Vito seems more like Sal, where he's not. You know, he's more chill.
Yeah, and he's like super friendly with Mookie.
Yeah.
And he tries to be friendly with Bugging Out, and Bugging Out just like blows him off.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of these things where you can have people very close together that have very different views on race.
Yeah.
You know, Sal is their dad, and Vito's his brother, but Pino has a totally different view than the rest of them.
And even in the film, it goes from, it's like, oh, you know, the friends you're hanging out with are the ones who are telling you that. They're not your friends. They're not your friends for telling you these things.
Yes.
You know, it's a lot of environment going on. But here's something interesting, because I noticed this on the watch and additional reading. So, we have a lot of things going on about how people express themselves. Sure. Smiley's trying to express himself through, like, his art with, you know, the drawings on the pictures of MLK and Malcolm X. We have Radio Raheem expressing himself with his radio. His radio is him, right? It's his artifact.
His name is Radio Raheem. It's in the name.
And then we have Sal expressing literally his, like, culture and, you know, his ethnic background with the Hall of Fame. That's why it's all Italian people. And you can even argue bugging out, he's expressing himself with, like, how he dresses. Because he's the most, like, garishly dressed. He has the crazy haircut, the big glasses. He's got the Jordans. How he, like, presents himself, his clothing.
Other people in this movie have Jordans, too, but he's got, like, the elephant print, like, the fancy Jordans,
He got the classy Jordans.
He got classy Jordans. Or, well, maybe not everybody in this movie is wearing Jordans, but a lot of them are wearing Nike. Mm-hmm. But he specifically has, like, these elephant print, obvious that they're, like, Jordans.
I like how Randy was like, yo, dude, them Jordans right there probably worth more than this movie cost to make.
No, but a pair of those Jordans now probably cost a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Because they were in this movie. They're very prominently shown, front and center of the camera.
I wonder if Spike Lee still owns them Jordans. I wonder if he just has them sitting in, like, a
probably
prop
just
room.
done by costume, so they probably just got hawked.
America, we need to find them J's. All right.
That would actually be cool, though, if they found them and they, like, auctioned them off to charity, signed by the cast or something like that.
That would be cool.
That'd be cool. But more on topic. Something I wanted to bring up about Radio Raheem. The only thing so far in the podcast that I've actually taken a note on while watching the movie is the love and hate thing that Radio Raheem does, right?
Yeah, from The Night of the Hunter.
Spike Lee references The Night of the Hunter, where he has Radio Raheem kind of do his own version of the spiel from the movie where, right hand, left hand, love and hate.
Yeah.
But the thing, though, I'm not sure how it's done in Night of the Hunter. I haven't seen it. Mm-hmm. I know you love that movie.
Love that movie. It's one of my favorites.
But Radio Raheem kind of equates the struggle between love and hate with violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if that's, like, so much with the spiel from Night of the Hunter. But the thing, though, is that he specifically, like, has love beat up hate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, beat it up physically with violence,
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like this thing where in his mentality he kind of equates, like, conquering the hate with violence here, where he's trying to fight the power with violence.
I mean, in Night of the Hunter, it's used more as a device to show Robert Mitchum's character how he is a person who portrays love, but he's full of hate because he's a preacher, but he's also a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's never said it's like, oh, old right hand's beating ass on old left hand. It's more like, oh, old left hand's winning, old right hand's coming back. Mm-hmm. It's not like a straight up where he's like doing it like Radio Raheem, where he's literally doing like boxing jabs and shadow boxing on him. Like, I do think this is an interesting point because that's how the movie. That's how, like, the movie ends up, right? People see this, like, hate going on, they respond with it with violence. The mayor sees this going on, he tries to respond with it with like peace. It's like we just gotta go home. We gotta walk away from this.
This poses kind of a dichotomy where the two ways to deal with kind of like racial tensions, mm-hmm. where one of them is kind of like this more straightforward confrontational aspect, and one is more of a like kind of like laid back kind of like
start the dialogue,
peaceful dialogue sharing type of way, which I think is kind of shown in the two quotes at the end of the movie between the Martin Luther King quote, which is very peaceful, and the Malcolm X quote, which isn't so much advocating violence as saying that it's an option, while rare, usually in self-defense, is an option.
It's like violence should never be your first choice, but it is your last choice, then use it. Yes.
It was kind of not so much like completely accurate use of the quote, but it's kind of like the gist,
Yeah. And it is interesting because the movie's deep.
It is deep.
There's a lot of things going on here. And it's weird for me because I talked about this in like a classroom setting for a long time. If you ever go to like film school or anywhere like that, you're gonna watch Do the Right Thing probably at least 3 times, no matter where you go. Sorry.
Well, as long as it's in America.
As long as it's in America, you will. Especially in Southern California, but whatever.
Or probably New York.
Definitely in New York. He teaches in NYU, I think.
Spike Lee?
I think so. He does some, I don't know if it's NYU, but definitely he teaches somewhere in like New York City. And he'll do like a semester on, semester off. He teaches there kind of infrequently, but he does teach there.
Neat.
Yeah. From what I hear from reviews from his students, he's kind of a dick.
Really?
Yeah, that's
wow. Complete tangent.
Complete tangent. I looked up Spike Lee on Rate My Professor.
No.
He has a Rate My Professor page because he's a professor.
Yes.
Yeah, he's kind of a dick.
Oh, that's funny. That's actually so funny.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently he's...
Doesn't really have much to do with the film, though.
Not much to do with the film.
Other than his acting.
Oh, you know.
Could you imagine, people are like, well, you're not a very good actor. And he's like, shut the fuck up.
Racist.
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things where, Spike Lee does what he does. And he's a great filmmaker. I mean, this film is very much proof that he is a very good filmmaker at the very least.
It deserves a spot on the top 100.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll get to it later.
We'll get to it later. But where do you want to go next? Where do you want to go next on this film journey here?
So let's roll it back maybe to like more of the beginning.
Yeah.
Where bugging out. Well, go ahead. You just pointed up your finger like
I got a thing. Okay, so at the beginning of the film, the very very beginning, where we have Rosie Perez doing the dance.
Oh yeah.
In the opening title sequence.
Yes.
And you notice how the background of that, it's the Bed-Stuy neighborhood, but it's all painted on like a stage backdrop, right?
Yeah.
And she's dancing literally on a stage, and then I kind of noticed through the movie that this is like a play. It all takes place in like one location street thing. That's the opening.
Yes.
And then every interior we have is like very basic, plain. It's like apartment, pizzeria, another apartment. It's a lot of this feels like it's meant to be like this is a stage play. And that's how it's like, staged in the film and almost how it's portrayed. I mean, you made a point of one of the
cuts in the movie, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, one of the cuts in the movie.
Where they leave the radio station.
Yes, you got that.
They leave the radio station, and it's just like a cut happens, and they're like just standing out in front of a closed door.
Yeah,
and it's a very awkward start.
They're standing in front of a closed door, and it's like a half a second beat before they start walking. And that's one of those things that you see in a lot of like student films, where it's like, all right, so we're going to have you guys start from the door and you're going to start walking and talking, right? And some people are like, they didn't cut right on the action. They started at the start there.
Mm-hmm.
But if this was a stage play, that's a very normal thing.
Yeah. I mean, how else are you going to do it on a stage play,
Exactly. So I feel like there's...
Well, you should just have them come through the door, but that's besides
whatever, Mr. Theater Boy. But... I feel that's a thing. I think Spike Lee is pointing out that this is like a stage play, and like stage plays are a very old style piece of entertainment in America.
Also, stage plays usually involve more played up acting, which is kind of like how the Italians are in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Vito, Pino, and
Sal.
Where they're kind of played up,
Yeah, they're playing to the cheap seats.
Playing the cheap seats, just like the choir.
Yeah.
Playing to the cheap seats, too.
Well, that's another thing. The choir, a lot of this has Shakespearean, almost Shakespearean referencing going on, because we have the Shakespearean troublemaker and bugging out. We have the Shakespearean, like, choir. Oh, all the guys that come in and they're the goofy characters that jump in on people's shenanigans. That's, Martin Lawrence's character. And you have, like, the Agent of Peace, and you have, that with... the mayor. And then you even have the Shakespearean cameo. Because this is a thing about Shakespeare, I guess, historically, is that he had a bunch of cameos in all of his stuff. I think in Romeo and Juliet, he was the apothecary. And Spike Lee is, the main character in this, so a little bit more in a cameo.
more than just a cameo.
But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of Shakespearean elements to this, and I think the opening sequence really sets this up. It's like, hey, this is like Spike Lee's version of fucking Our Town.
I see.
Kind of thing.
Well, also with the opening sequence, they do get to show off kind of their song that was made for the movie.
Yeah.
In full.
And also Rosa Perez.
Because I'm sure Spike Lee was probably really up on Rosa Perez during this movie.
You know how Rosa Perez got the part in this film?
How?
So, Spike Lee, he's at a party. Rosa Perez is there. This is after he wrapped his last film. I think it was called School Days.
Sure.
And she is dancing on top of, like, a speaker. And Spike Lee is like, yo, get down from there. You're gonna, like, break something. Hurt yourself, whatever. And she comes down and starts cussing him out in a way only hot Latin women can cuss you out. And in that moment, he was like, Mookie's girlfriend's got to be Puerto Rican. In that exact moment. Also, he says she was dancing on top of the speaker because it was a booty popping contest.
Oh, Lord.
Was what was going on. Rose Perez says she was just dancing.
Oh, goodness.
Spike Lee said there was a booty contest going on.
Oh, goodness.
And she won the part, so I guess she won the contest as well. But yeah, so that's how she got the part in the movie.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Also, something we didn't mention before or whatever is that there's another group of people or whatever, is the Puerto Ricans.
Oh yeah.
Which we don't really see them often in the movie, but they do come up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the guys at the stoop or whatever, and they're playing their Latin music, and Radio Raheem kind of like confronts them with his music and kind of like plays his music louder than they could possibly play theirs to kind of like assert his dominance over them.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. Radio Raheem is going, because he just wanders through the streets of Bed-Stuy and just jamming his music.
Yes.
And he is also shot huge. Like, he looks huge in this movie.
They hit him with the camera angles where they're always looking up at him.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, where they frame it so that his face takes up the whole camera.
Yeah, it also helps Bill Nunn is just a large human being.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
And
for you.
Wow. And it's one of those things where I'm like, is Radio Raheem just like this street's like enforcer? Is he like, you know,
the neighborhood bully?
The neighborhood bully, the neighborhood watch? Because he seems to be friendly with everybody. He's just like this big guy.
Some people, but not others.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's friendly with like
Mookie bugging
out, and like a few other people, but he's not friendly with like the three guys across from the Korean store.
Yeah.
He's not friendly with Puerto Ricans.
Yeah.
He's not friendly with Sal.
Mm-hmm.
He's not friendly with the Koreans either.
Yeah.
He's only really friendly with like a few people in the movie.
Mm-hmm. And
there's even a part though where when he's leaving from like quote unquote asserting his dominance over the Puerto Rican stoop, where like this kid like runs up to him, like he's looking up to him, like he's like, oh, like look how cool Radio Raheem is. You noticed that?
Yeah. It's just, Radio Raheem's a very interesting character, because we know so little about him.
He barely talks during the movie, and whenever he talks, it's usually filled with a couple of motherfuckers.
A couple of motherfuckers with some, like, philosophy of love and hate.
But you know. Like, not the philosophy of love and hate, though, because it's not...
It's one scene.
It's not accurate, you know? It's not an accurate portrayal from Night of the Hunter, but, I mean, you know, it's a reference. But it's kind of like this thing where he put his own idea of like the battle between love and hate spin on it, which is like not helpful because it's a violent spin of the battle between love and hate.
It's interesting.
I guess it's dependent on your like theory of, you know, how to solve race relations, you know.
How does one solve race relations in America?
I'm over here being like, solving is like a whole nother thing, you know. Solving implies that it's all the way gone. It's never going to be all the way gone.
Dealing with it is a
much better way to look at it, you know. I'm more pragmatic, you know. No, not so much idealist.
But yeah, like we have a lot of good characters here. Also, I gotta get back to something. So we talked a lot about like Radio Raheem. We talked a little bit about, you know, the choir character and stuff like that. Let's get into our main character of Mookie.
Mookie, yeah.
Cause
kind of scumbag,
right? He's just a shitty father. Like I'm not gonna mince words. Mookie is a shitty dad. He's a shitty employee, and he's kind of a douche.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because before I was watching this, I'm like, you know, it's like a really like real, honest portrayal of somebody who's like just like struggling to get by.
Yeah.
But then I'm like looking at it again, and I'm like, Mookie, you're kind of an asshole. Because objectively, he's not a good dad, right?
He's not a good dad because
he never sees his kid. He avoids Tina unless he wants to bang.
Well, Tina brings that up in the movie where she says, you know, you haven't been here for like 4 days. And now you want to do the nasty, you know, it's not happening.
Yeah, and then obviously he's supposed to be living with Tina because when he's not there, he's sleeping in his sister's bed.
Well, also Tina's mom hates him.
Yeah.
With only the kind of hate a Latin woman could do.
We both date Latin women. I feel we know this to a degree. But yeah, it's just...
Well, he's a shitty employee. They talk about him taking 2-hour breaks all the time, you know.
He goes home and showers in the middle of the day, like in the middle of his shift. He'll like go on deliveries and just like not come back.
He asks Sal to like pay him like halfway through his shift. You know, he's always arguing with them.
And I'm like, dog, you're a pizza boy. Just
deliver the
pizza and you can just you can chill. Read a newspaper or something. God damn. It's not that hard of a job. And also,
well, I mean, maybe it is kind of a difficult job with Vito around, or not Vito, Pino around.
it probably is a difficult job with Pino around, because Pino's also
Just
way
a
bigger.
huge dick.
Pino is such a bigger bastard than Mookie is. Mookie's just kind of a schmuck, but it's like, okay, he's a okay dude, but he's just such a schmuck. Pino is a fucking bastard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Because Pino even gets really mad at Smiley or whatever and starts yelling at him in the street. It's the reason why Smiley ends up going with Radio Raheem and bugging out near the end against Sal's, is because Pino just like blows up at him.
Pino, it's just Smiley. He don't mean anything. Just let him go.
No better.
Just let him go.
You know, and he's like, you know, he calls Spike Lee the N-word, you know, and then he has this whole conversation with him where he tries to have this argument with him that I've seen a lot online about how there's a difference between black people and N-words.
Yeah,
unquote.
that piece of dialogue, it's like Spike Lee talking directly to a lot of like racist or prejudiced people. It's like, bro, you hold these racist views, but your favorite like entertainers, athletes, this, that, are African American, people of color. You see the hypocrisy in your belief system, right? I feel that there's a lot of stuff like that going on. The dialogue between characters, and it's just Spike Lee saying, people, you know you're on the wrong side here, right? And speaking on the wrong side of history, I think I mentioned this to you.
What?
Where the Driving Miss Daisy thing?
Yes.
Did I tell you about the controversy thing that happened at the Oscars when it was announced?
No.
So, the actress who was giving away the Best Picture that year...
Yes.
Said when she was reading it off, it's like, all right, everybody, in Best Picture of this year, which should be going to Do the Right Thing, is actually going to Driving Miss Daisy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some shade.
Super shade. Well, because Driving Miss Daisy won Best Picture in 89 is when this movie came out.
89.
And everybody was very sure, it was like, guys, Do the Right Thing is like the best movie out this year. It's
Was it
so
really
deep.
the best movie out?
Well,
I mean, I don't want to throw shade at Do the Right Thing. You know, it's a good movie, but good enough to win Best Picture?
dude,
It must have been a dry year.
bro, are you kidding me?
It's a good movie. You know, it's very thoughtful, but I mean, you know, it doesn't really have much like wide appeal here. You know.
Okay. I'll give you the Best Pictures of 1989 for you. All right, and you tell me if any of these are better. Driving Miss Daisy, Born on the 4th of July, Field of Dreams, Dead Poet Society, My Left Foot.
I've heard good things about Dead Poet Society and Driving Miss Daisy.
I mean, Dead Poet Society will make you cry at the end, but are they better than Do the Right Thing? Are they as more socially conscious?
I haven't seen either of them. I don't know, like, you know, maybe Driving Miss Daisy, you know, it's got softer takes on race and relations in America, which I'm sure it does.
It's the same thing where it's like when Green Book won over Black Klansman for Best Picture. It's like, yo, we're going to pick the safest movie about race in America.
Also, Do the Right Thing wasn't even nominated, which is probably a huge snub.
It was the... Bruh. At the announcement, the movie that should be winning...
Alright, maybe, you know, this isn't the, like, Hall of Fame inductee list I was looking for when I was like, oh, maybe, you know...
You were hoping it's like, bruh, like Raiders came out this year. Fucking King.
You know. But if this is the competition we have to go up against, like, you know, hey, probably should have won then.
Yeah. I mean, Roger Ebert gave this thing a glowing review. He was one of the only critics to give it, like... actually get the movie and give it a glowing review according to Spike Lee, because he mentioned in this, and I guess that this was a little thing about the end of the movie, is Roger Ebert made the statement that's like, this movie is amazing, it's one of the most thoughtful takes on race in America, it understands it and speaks about it in a very adult way, and he finds it strange and abhorrent that so many people get angry that Sal's Pizzeria burned down when Raider Raheem lost his life. That's what the movie's about. And I was gonna ask you this, you know, because Sal's Pizzeria, you know, burns down, and people always ask, it's like, you know, oh, did Mookie do the right thing, you know, by burning down Sal's Pizzeria? But the grand scheme of things, Raider Raheem fucking died. Yeah, he died at the end of the movie. The police killed him. Yes. I don't know. I kind of wanted to talk about that because it's a big part of the movie.
Well, so the movie basically ends with Raider Raheem bursting into Sal's Pizzeria, with Bugging Out and Smiley blasting his music and like kind of having this big confrontation with Sal. And this is right after Sal has like a really heartfelt moment with Mookie and his sons in the pizzeria, you know, and then the choir shows up and Sal's like, oh, I'll serve them, you know, 4 last slices. I know we're closed, but hey.
These kids grew up on my pizza.
These kids grew up on my pizza. You know, he's having a real sentimental moment. It's a really nice moment. And then Radio Raheem, Bugging Out, and Smiley, like, burst onto the scene and have this huge moment with Sal. Mostly Radio Raheem and Bugging Out. Smiley's just kind of in the background at this point. You know, he's along for the ride. Mm-hmm. And Sal ends up taking out a bat and breaking the radio. So after that, Radio Raheem, like, jumps the counter at him and starts, like, strangling Sal. Like, he's gonna freaking kill him, right?
Yeah. And we've established that, you know, Radio Raheem is a giant human being compared to everyone else. At least visually with camera work.
And so they have, like, this huge scuffle. He gets taken outside. The police finally show up. Well, not finally, but police show up. And the like, whole neighborhood's out. And they break up the fight, and the police, like, restrain Radio Raheem and end up, like, choking him to death. Yeah. It's one of those things where you look at it and there's, like, a lot... I feel like there's more than just one way to, like, interpret the events there. Mm-hmm. You know, you could be like, oh, well, the police are just, like, way overstepping their bounds. They're, like... They strangle the guy to death. Like, it is, like, an abhorrent abuse of power.
One of the police officers yelling at the guy strangling him, just like, let him go. He's over. It's done.
Yeah. And you could look at it where it's like, you know, it's a very, like, stressful moment. You know, Radio Raheem is a huge dude, and they're trying to, like, restrain him.
It's taking 3 or 4 guys to just pull him up.
Big police officers to, like, get him away. And it's one of these things where it's like, you know, it's like an unfortunate happenstance, right? Where it's like, you know, he could have, you know, not choked him out. We're not saying that, like, oh, he had to. Yeah. Yeah. But it's just saying, like, these things... unfortunately do happen. Yeah. Not trying to get into current things that have happened recently, you know. We're not going to touch on those.
We're a film podcast, not a politics podcast.
Well, we can start one of those maybe later. But you know, after our film podcasts are dead and gone. But you know, there's like more nuanced ways to look at it other than just, you know, these cops in the neighborhood are fucking bastards or whatever.
Yeah, because we do see the cops throughout the film. We see them interacting with the kids after they, you know, bust the fire hydrant and they get that guy's car wet.
Get that like old like Cadillac or whatever like soaked. Yeah. And they don't really do anything then, which is kind of like one of these, like, strange portrayals, you know, where it's at the end of the movie, they're kind of, like, vilified, you know, because they kill Radio Raheem. But at that point, it's kind of like, well, they don't arrest any of, like, these black kids that, like, ruined this guy's car or, like, opened the fire hydrant. They don't do anything. They just leave.
Yeah, they just told the guy to fuck off and go home.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like one of these weird things where it's like, I'd really love to know, straight from the horses, straight from Spike Lee, like, what he meant by this.
This is one of those things... show,
like, and maybe... inadequate policing in these neighborhoods? Because I'm like...
Well, I mean, the cops are inadequate here, right?
Yes. Well, because, like, they under-police in some areas and over-police in others. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's, like, supposed to be the thing, where they don't handle things even-handedly.
They don't. No, not in this. I mean, okay.
Well, but I'm saying in, like a social commentary type of thing, you know?
Yeah, no, I would feel that's probably an accurate
is that what he's going for?
Here. I would have to say yes. That probably has to be what it is, because it has to be comment on like policing in these African American neighborhoods, ethnic neighborhoods, where, you know, I think back in 1989 it was still, what is it, you didn't need a warrant to search somebody, or it was like the stop and frisk thing where you would just stop random people and just frisk them, and that was super big in, like, you know, African American neighborhoods. So I feel that's kind of what he's commentating on, is like, you know, the police aren't good with this. They just come in, you know, break shit down and leave. They come in, kill Radio Raheem, and instead of, like, being there to, like, calm the people, they just, you know, pick the body up and leave. They leave. You know?
The thing, though, is that's what happens at the end of the movie, but in the earlier parts of the movie, they're kind of shown in, like, a completely different way. Yeah. Like, they're shown being, like, friendly with Sal. They're shown, like, patrolling the neighborhood, but, like,
mad dogging.
But, like, mad dogging and, like, the 3 guys that hang out across the way from the Korean store. They're shown, you know, repairing the fire hydrant and kind of like not policing anything there, just kind of telling everybody like, hey, knock it off, everybody go home, including the guy that like had his like, you know, antique car like damaged.
Yeah.
This like strange portrayal of them because it's maybe it's more nuanced.
Maybe,
you know, showing them as being more just like kind of more normal people, like maybe like them mad dogging the guys outside of the Korean shop, not so much being them like mad dogging them as like more like banter.
I don't know, because it's one of those things where how the police interact with people, because I feel a lot of this is like communication and miscommunication.
Yes.
Because people are trying to communicate with each other and it's just not happening. Raider Rahim Bugging Out tries to communicate with Sal that he feels his people aren't being respected in Sal's establishment, even though his people are, you know, the predominant patrons. And then it's like, well, the cops, are they mad dogging Sweet Willie and his boys, or are they just like looking at them as they're driving by because they've been in the car for 6 hours?
Well, they say what a waste when they like drive by, but you know, maybe Sweet Dick Willie and the two other guys are just there every single day.
I mean, that's another thing, because like we see them throughout this entire day from morning to night, because this takes place over the course of like 24 hours, and they only sit there. And even Amel, he makes a point where it's like, look at the Korean shop owners. They've been here, you know, for only like a year, and they already have this business. You know, one day we're going to make a business in our own neighborhood. We're going to be the ones bringing jobs and, you know, all this stuff into our neighborhood. And Sweet Dick Willie calls him on. It's like, you've been here how long? You ain't done shit.
True.
And I feel like that, like, the comment is like, oh, what a waste. It could be the cops being like, you know, a racially charged thing. It's like, oh, what a waste of this neighborhood with these people here. Or it could be a thing like, what a waste. Those guys sitting there all day, they could, you know, be out there doing something. You know, they're wasting their time here.
But the thing is, though, this is on a Saturday, right? So they
Something
could
like
just
that.
not be working today. But it's implied that this is just kind of something they do all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of these things where I guess the take on police is like more nuanced than once thought.
Yeah.
Which is like very like out of place for a movie about racial relations in America.
Yeah.
To have nuanced police. That is just a complete out of left field.
Here's another thing. A lot of people, when they talk about this movie, they're like, well, the villains of this piece are obviously the police officers because they kill Raider Rahim. But I'm like, wait a minute.
The real villain here, to me, is Bugging Out.
The villain is Bugging Out. Well, yeah, if you look at the butterfly effect of the film, Bugging Out's the reason everything kind of happens. He's the agent of, like, shit's gonna happen that leads to Raider Rahim being killed, Sal's Pizzeria burning down. It's that weird butterfly effect, right? But could it be Sal's thing where he's just like, well, he could just put something up on the wall and there's no movie.
Well, but here's the thing, though, is that there's no, like, real strong reason for him to, like, put up something on the wall. He just wants to represent his own ethnic background, the ethnic background that started Sal's Pizzeria, right?
He's communicating his culture with this wall.
Yeah, it's one of these things where it's not so much as he's, like, overbearing his culture onto them. It's more like he just wants to show them this is the culture when you enter Sal's Pizzeria. It's an Italian pizzeria. Look at all these great Italians, you know,
like,
you might not have known of. Look at how like good at boxing my people are, or acting, you know.
It's just like, he's like, my name is Sal, my kids are named Vito and Pino, we're in a pizzeria, there's Italians on the wall.
You know, but like it's not like he's not serving them because of their race or anything. Like, he takes pride in the fact that he's served these kids. He's raised these kids on his pizza.
He doesn't want to leave the neighborhood because he's like, I made roots here. This is where I belong. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a really nuanced and it's a really interesting movie. It's a very good movie.
It's a very accurate portrayal of race relations in America, where there's like two sides of every coin, you know?
Yeah. You know, there's the people who are like hardcore racist, like Pino, and there are people who are like, I don't want to say like us. Can you be a soft racist?
Sure you can.
Yeah, and like, I'm trying to think, like, a soft racist would be somebody like, I don't know, maybe the three Sweet Dick Willie and his friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they're not yelling at anybody. They're just like, they're how they interact with the Korean shop owners are a little
like insensitive. Like Sweet Dick Willie basically is like talking to ML and Sid about how like these Koreans actually did something with their lives. He's like complimenting them on like their ability to like come to America and start this business and only
work the American dream.
Yeah, working on an American dream, starting their own business in New York in only like a few years maybe, and is like complimenting on like that part, right? But then he walks up to them and he calls them kung fu and asks them to get him a beer or whatever.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's like it's not like he hates everything about them. He just kind of is insensitive to them.
How he communicates with them is just wrong.
Yes.
And that I think that, again, I keep going back to this. I think this film is honestly about how we communicate with each other and how that miscommunication breeds this like racial tension.
Actually, that's a very good point, because there's this idea, and I mentioned it earlier, where everybody like MLK's like whole idea on like how to handle race relations like very crystal clear.
Yeah.
Everybody understands like violence, we all should just get along, judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin.
Dialogue is the key to justice.
Justice, right? But people have a very hard time understanding like Malcolm X's like ideas of race relation in America and like how to handle them. Because there's a very famous photo of him like looking out the window like with the rifle, right? But the thing is that he wasn't like he wasn't one of these people that was just like, oh, if you disagree with the politicians, if they're passing these bills you think are racist, just shoot them.
Yeah, he was not that guy.
That's not what he was saying. He's not one of those people. And like 99% of these black advocacy groups are not like that. 99% of Black Panthers aren't like that. It's not what they do. They kind of see using maybe not the threat, but the idea of violence is kind of being like, hey, we don't want to do these things, right? But if you force us to, we will.
You can only encroach so far before this becomes defense.
Yeah, and it's like, Malcolm X would rather have dealt with all these problems the diplomatic way. It's just kind of one of these things where Martin Luther King would die for his cause, right? He would, if somebody pulled out a gun and shot him, which they did, but I'm saying more confrontational thing and not staying on top of a bathtub, down the block.
Yeah.
That he would have probably just gotten shot for his cause. He'd have been like, if you feel that way, just shoot me, right? But Malcolm X would have probably punched the guy out.
Yeah. Which is the reason why you gotta love Malcolm X. Okay, this is a little antidote thing.
Here's the main point though I was getting at is that people don't understand that, right? They see the picture of Malcolm X with a gun looking out the window. They remember back to that picture of the Black Panthers in like a Capitol building, I don't remember where, but they were all like armed, right? They all had guns. And they think like, oh, like violence is the answer to these problems. Look at these like figures in the past. They used violence to better like their ideas, so I can too. But the thing is that they didn't use violence. They didn't go in there and shoot people. They just went in there and kind of presented themselves. It was like they gave them the idea that if you go too far, what will happen. It's not so much a threat as an idea.
Yeah, I mean, to the anecdotal thing I was kind of talking about, because you're a big fan of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You read
his biography, Let the Trumpet Sound. Yes.
Yeah, and you were going to read the Malcolm X
Autobiography of Malcolm X, which I should have read in between these two recordings. Would have been way better.
Yeah,
it's too lazy. I didn't do it.
But yeah, and because we had a very interesting thing when we were younger, because one of our I guess the school teacher, I guess she was like the arts and craft teacher when we were elementary school, Mrs. Blackburn.
Yes.
Because she grew up, to my remembrance, she grew up in like the deep South. She
was an older lady.
Yeah, when we were in elementary school, which was almost 20 years ago at this point, she had to have been like her 60s or 70s by then.
Yeah.
She was a much older lady, African American lady. She grew up in the deep South, and she would tell us, it's like, it was Martin Luther King Day. He's like, no, his name is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
You gotta say the whole thing.
You gotta say the whole thing.
It's a matter of respect.
Yeah, and she was like, I saw him when I was younger in the South when he was doing marches and things like that. She's like, that movement meant something. And I'm like, gives me chills thinking about it.
It was a huge movement.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, getting back to the movie, because it ends with the Martin Luther King quote and the Malcolm X quote, and it really asks the question, violence, violence, race, how these things boil over, how racial tensions just can beget violence, and what we need is dialogue or discussion, that whole thing going on. And this movie does start a dialogue. It does start a good discussion. Okay, I guess since we're like an hour into this, or just about, I'll ask you one final question. We'll get into the wrap up. So, at the end of the movie, when Mookie throws the trash can through the window, because this is probably the most asked question, does Mookie do the right thing? Because people believe he throws it through the window because it rediverts the anger of the people from Sal to an object that can be destroyed and rebuilt, but not to a life that can be snuffed out. Thoughts?
So, the thing here, what I've heard about this from the last time I recorded this, sorry to remind everybody that this is a re-recording.
Yes.
Is that Mookie is, how do I put this? That him diverting the anger from Sal to the pizzeria wasn't in the mind of Spike Lee when he made the movie, correct? Mm-hmm. He says that it was not Mookie's intention to do so, that it was more of a boiling over point where he just wanted to destroy something at that point because the tensions had reached a fever pitch. He couldn't take it anymore. It was hot.
He saw his best friend die.
One of his best friends, Rady Rahim, die, and he just kind of like has this overflowing moment and destroys the window. Mm. So I believe in that case, he wouldn't have done the right thing. But in the case that he does intentionally throw the trash can through the window to divert the crowd's anger from Sal to his pizzeria, then it is the right thing to do. Mm. So it's kind of one of these things where, is it the audience's interpretation that's quote-unquote correct? I know nobody likes doing that in like the film theory world, whose interpretation is correct?
Is it the audience's interpretation, the critic interpretation? Is it the auteur's interpretation?
But, at the end of the day, everybody is right in their own way. Mm. I would say that he does do... No, he doesn't do the right thing.
He doesn't.
I say he doesn't do the right thing because his intention isn't to save Sal. His intention is just to throw the trash can through the window of the pizzeria to get back at Sal for Rady Rahim dying.
Yeah. I mean, because I understand Spike Lee's thing. Oh, sorry.
Here, another thing is that there was no sure way, or there's no sureness when he throws the trash can through the window of Sal's pizzeria that it's going to divert the anger from Sal to Sal's pizzeria. It's not 100%, right? When he does that, it's not like he knows for sure it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, because I look at it and it's just like, Spike Lee is a very empathetic director, I'll say, because he was looking at it as like, okay, what would a human being feel at this moment when they see their friend die and all these things going on, this tension. And he's like, an explosion of emotion.
Yes.
And I think the audiences that look at it are looking at it from a more logical thing, where it's like they're removing the character as a human and inserting a character as a expression of theme kind of thing. So I would argue that he does do the right thing if we're going with how an audience would interpret it, or how it will be interpreted through history. Like, if I showed this to somebody in the blind and they didn't know Spike Lee's opinions, they would say he did the right thing. But if they knew Spike Lee's intent, then I feel Mookie's act is not the right thing for the situation, but probably the right thing for his emotional state. But that's a whole weird wibbly wobbly wumbo jumbo thing.
Well, it's like, the way things turned out, it was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But I think
the way things could have gone could have been way worse.
But I think the thing here is that even if Mookie does it and it ends up being the right thing to do, he does it for the wrong reasons, right? He does it because he's frustrated and angry that Radio Raheem died for nothing.
Yeah.
Because Radio Raheem basically does die for nothing.
He does.
He dies just because like he wants to play his music in Sal's Pizzeria.
Yeah.
At the very essence of it, he dies because his persona is his music. You know, and that he like unfortunately it's like an inability for him to like cope with not having his music in Sal's Pizzeria.
Because the music, the radio,
the music
is
him, you know.
Sal is prejudiced because he's not allowing the music in, not allowing Radio Raheem in, because of the music, because who he is. He won't let him in. That's a
bull.
weird. But
that's bull, because I'm pretty sure 99% of people wouldn't let somebody with a boombox blasting their own rap music into their establishment.
I don't know. We'd have to see.
Oh, do you want to go down to Panera and see what they say if we come in blasting
Dude,
NWA?
Panera ain't gonna care. But like Express Pizza over by high school, when we would go in there, they probably would have kicked our asses out. Besides the point.
A nice Asian American establishment.
Well, they were stoned all the time. It was fine.
True.
Yeah. That pizza came out on stoner time, but it was delicious.
It was delicious. Just like Sal's Pizzeria probably was delicious.
But yeah.
Oh, we didn't talk about Mookie's sister. It's a huge part of this movie.
That is a huge part of this movie. You know what? Fuck it. We got a little extra time. So, Jade, she comes into the pizzeria. She has an interaction with Sal. Mookie takes it as Sal is hitting on her. And our interpretation, or at least Sal's like, I'm not hitting on her. I'm just being nicer because she's a nice person.
Mm-hmm.
So
she's one of the nicer people in the neighborhood. She's on that level with like the mayor.
Yeah.
Where she has like a very level-headed, sensible opinion about things. She's just a nice person. She seems well off too in the movie. And it's kind of one of these things where, she's just trying to have a good time talking to Sal at the pizzeria, talking about her life.
Catching up.
Mookie kind of like takes offense with that, right? And you can kind of interpret it that, because she's having this like nice interaction with Sal, not so much because like Sal's, because you can kind of like see it from this angle. I want to get to it in a second. That not because Sal is Mookie's boss or because Sal isn't a nice guy, because Sal is Italian American. Mookie doesn't want Jade to be like intermingling there,
Yeah, I mean that's when we see Pino and he has the same look on his face as Mookie does, and that's what Pino is thinking.
Most definitely, that's what Pino's thinking. Mookie might just be like, he's my boss. Don't be messing with him. He's also an older guy. Mm-hmm. But Pino is definitely like, is he really looking at this expletive about African American woman? Because they do have that moment in the movie where everybody just yells expletives about some other race.
Yeah, which is kind of out of nowhere, but it's also like almost really necessary.
I think it's a good part about the movie. It's one of those things where, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I kind of understand why it's there. But now it's like, it's almost a necessary part of the movie because there's all this like racial tension building up under the surface. And that part of the movie where it's just a bunch of people yelling like racial expletives at a camera kind of shows the like, it takes the undertones of the movie and then just brings it to the foreground in like plain as day.
It's like, here's your brain, let's crack it open and just pour it out all over the screen. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful moment. It's a powerful scene.
Moment of the movie, yes, definitely.
But yeah, Sal was definitely wanting to bang Jade.
No, he wasn't. He's just being nice to her. She's like one of the nicest people in the neighborhood, and she's nice like the mayor is, but without smelling like a bum like the mayor probably smells like.
Probably.
She's a nice lady. She's well off.
Yeah.
It'd be like, one of your best customers comes in and they're like actually a nice person, You're like,
wow.
They're
When I worked
not some
retail,
loud kid.
When I worked in retail, everyone was a bastard except for 3 or 4 people. And those people, I would die for you, my friends, all right? You came in and you didn't cuss me out for getting your cigarettes wrong. Good people. Good people. But yeah, do the right thing.
Really good, very accurate portrayal of race relations in America. It's got kind of like these ideas of people being like misguided. It's got these ideas of miscommunication. Just like, people misunderstanding each other.
Yeah, and it's a very powerful portrayal. There's great acting in this film. Asterisks. There's sorry, Spike Lee.
Sorry, Spike Lee.
And there's just a wonderful score going on. I really like the instrumental stuff with like the jazzy stuff they have going on through here.
You've got Tina's tits.
Rosie Perez, Kino. And it's just a really just well-made movie.
Oh, I was referencing the Mulholland Drive episode.
Yeah. I actually re-listened to that episode not too long ago, and we talk about boobs in that episode a lot.
Well, because I was trying to like figure something out, you know. It was
right.
my first episode on a podcast, or my first time being on a podcast, first time like really thinking about film theory, and I just got really hooked on that idea. But you can go listen to that episode if you want to hear the deep dive on tits and movies.
Yeah. But yeah, I would highly recommend this movie. I actually did recommend this movie to somebody because they asked like, "Oh, what are some movies I should absolutely see at least once in my life?" And this one's on there.
I'm not sure if I would recommend the movie because it's not like a popcorn movie, you know, and that's like more on, you know, the level of people that would ask me like recommendations for a movie.
That's true.
You know, Blade Runner, I was like, there's deeper undertones to that movie, far deeper. You know, the deepness so far as to be like the theory of like what do you define as a soul? What do you define as living? Who is human? You're like, what is humanity? You know, but the movie on its surface, you could just totally like crack open some popcorn, give it a watch.
Big chill, yeah.
This movie, on the other hand, you got to be ready to be thinking a little deeper.
And you got to be ready to have stuff thrown at you. Because the camera sometimes throws things at you with how it moves and how the cinematography is used.
What's with the angles in this movie? They always do it like offset, like Dutch angles.
Yeah. Well, that's like a Spike Lee thing.
That's a Spike Lee thing? Okay.
Well, yeah,
okay.
He likes that in a lot of his movies. He did a lot in like in The Five Bloods. I know he did it a lot. I'm pretty sure he did it a few times in Black Klansman. He does it in this movie a lot. It became like a signature thing for a lot of his filmography.
Okay.
But yeah, and also it does a thing because, you know, the drastic camera angles and he makes him look huge. Or when a character enters and it's that boom Dutch angle, it's like, okay, things are happening and it's off kilter now. Things are
yeah. The moment broken. Is changing.
Yeah, so it's used effectively. This is a wonderfully like there's good filmmaking on display here. But before we get to the wrap or the end part where I tell people what's happening next, so you know where would it go on the list? Because I remember in the first one we said somewhere in the 70s. It can't be down here in the 90s.
I think I said like mid 80s. Like it should move up.
Okay.
But now, because since we've watched this episode, we've watched Last Picture Show
and Pulp Fiction.
Kind of not so sure if it should really be spiking up into the 80s, considering, you know, the things we've watched since then. But maybe it really should get bumped up there into the 80s.
Well, some people say this should be in the top 10.
I think that's a little much. Well, it is in the idea of an American top 100 film.
And this is a very
American film, deals with very American. But the thing, though, is that I don't want to get too hung up on like the way the movie looks. But the production value is not so much there. Like, that cut or whatever, where they're just standing in front of the door. Maybe he was going for that whole stage play thing. But to me, that just looks like shoddy craftsmanship. Like,
I got you.
You know, like, Spike Lee acting in his own movie. I don't know.
I get you.
It's look, like these things where it's like the overall quality of the movie isn't so far up there as being like the top 10, but the ideas behind it, you know, I could see if the two met each other, how good the ideas are behind this movie and like the themes it deals with. If those were as good as also the production, well then easily top 10.
Yeah.
But it's not. So I'm thinking maybe bump it up into like maybe high 80s, even like an 88. Or 89.
I feel this could very easily, like, if they did the redo of this could very easily go up until, like, at least the 50s, maybe more.
So I think it could move a huge amount.
I think this could be a huge mover, because I think it's way more important than people think it is, and I think it's the thing where this is a movie on rewatch and reevaluation, it still resonates. And that's the thing that some of the movies we have watched up to this point, I don't know how much resonation they have, because with like Blade Runner, it's just talking about these huge things philosophers have been going over for generations, and thousands of years. You know, even Toy Story is very, you know, simple, direct, but it has these very deep thoughts and, you know, purpose and things like that. And then there's Yankee Doodle Dandy. There's Yankee Doodle Dandy. Yeah. But I'm like, do the right thing. I feel like this is a movie when you watch and its social commentary is so on point and so relevant. I feel that alone, it's better than the 90s.
The thing, though, where, you know, this might be a controversial opinion, but the idea of social commentary about, like, philosophizing about the real world versus something like Blade Runner where you philosophize about ideas themselves.
Yeah.
You know, some people prefer the latter than the former. Some people don't like talking about how the world is.
How shitty the world
about
is.
How the world could be.
Yeah.
Or, you know, how ideas are, you know.
I'm in the opinion that this movie, if there was a new list, definitely would go up a lot higher. It go out of the 90s. We can both agree on that, right? Yeah. Like, it does not deserve to be down here so much.
Yes.
So, you know, agree to disagree. Once we get to, like, I guess
we both agree that it's going to be Mover.
It's going to be
Mover. How much
Mover.
it's going to.
Yeah. I mean, we were looking into doing a, I guess, our own little sorting list thing at some point. Once we get a couple more movies in, obviously. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll write our own 100 and see where these go.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice exercise after we finish watching all the movies to write our own 100, see what could come off. You know, maybe not so much what could come on. You know, we could just maybe make some space at the bottom for some movies.
Yeah. You know, it'll be an interesting exercise. You know, how about this? Do the Right Thing comes in at number, what is this, 96? And we already recorded, you know, a couple episodes after this. How about this? Once we finish the first 10, we'll just say what our favorite 10 are, or the order how we like them.
Okay, we'll reorder 10 at a time.
Yeah, we'll reorder 10 at a time.
We'll reorder the ones we've watched, but do it 10 at a time. So at 10, we'll reorder the last 10. At 20, we'll reorder the list. We'll just keep reordering the list as we go along.
Every 10 we'll have, I don't know, a 20, 30-minute special. To do it. So you can always look forward to that. But with that, I know this is re-recording, but we can tell you what you're going to be listening to next week. And next week is going to be The Last Picture Show, which, Randy, have you ever seen this before in the future?
Yeah, well, yes, I've seen it now, but it was good.
It was really good. I highly recommend to go and check it out.
Discussion on the movie, too.
Yeah, that one's, I think, the episode where we finally had that tipping point where we really kind of got the podcast.
Yes.
So, highly recommend it. Should go and watch it. And should go and listen to our episode. And if you wanted to, you can check us out on our Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor FM. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, In the Frame. And all of that is under the Film Odyssey podcast. And with that, Randy, any last words?
This movie is a very good interpretation of racial relations in America. It's very accurate. That's the truth. Root.
I like that one.